Welcome to AECI Water, a division of AECI Group. AECI Water embraces a safety culture and strives toward the goal of zero harm. The safety and protection of our people and the environment is our top priority. We aspire to operate without harm to people, the environment, and the communities in which we operate. To ensure zero harm, we believe in these four critical fundamentals. Accountable leadership that sets the tone for zero harm. Our business comes with risks, and we take reasonable steps to minimize and mitigate those risks. We drive continuous improvement actions to achieve zero harm, and our people own and actively participate in the journey to zero harm. We demonstrate and live by the desired behaviors every day. To ensure zero harm, we believe in these four critical fundamentals. In order to achieve zero harm, our team exhibit the Captain Zero traits. In other words, applying the principles of life-saving behaviors, critical behaviors, and keeping each other out of harm's way. Our life-saving behaviors inculcate a culture of safety throughout the group and focus on those behaviors and activities that have the potential risk of serious injury or fatality when safety rules are not adhered to. The following safety measures have been put in place. The 15 critical behaviors focus on those behaviors and activities that enforce the safe behaviors that are required to minimize any risk of recordable injuries. In our effort to manage safety, health, environment, and quality, we subscribe to the following standards: ISO 45000, ISO 14001, ISO 9001, and responsible care. Entry into AECI offices and laboratories. Before entering the AECI water areas, ensure you complete the visitor's register. All visitors and contractors must proceed to the reception area where he or she will be connected to the host. Upon entry to our site, visitors or contractors must declare all personal items at security. In other words, cameras, weapons, and laptops, etc. All visitors and contractors will be issued with a card confirming your induction. Personal protective equipment. Most of our offices do not have any mandatory PPE, but please take note of the PPE before gaining access into the laboratories where applicable. Make sure that you have all the PPE as prescribed. The standard PPE for accessing labs is a lab coat and closed shoes. Further PPE is required for those conducting analysis. Wear your PPE as required. Check the condition of your PPE before you wear it. Defective PPE will not be allowed under any circumstances. When handling hazardous chemical substances, ensure that you understand the PPE requirements. Details can be found on the safety data sheet. Visitors must never take shortcuts through the laboratory, exposing themselves to unknown hazards. Do not wander around. Stick with your host at all times. Legal requirements. Note that AECI water sites are governed by certain legislations which include acts and regulations, municipality bylaws, etc. These have been translated into SHE rules and must be adhered to at all times. To name a few, the OSH Act and its regulations, NEMA, and many more. AECI Water takes compliance seriously and enforces it throughout our operations. Remember, you may refuse to carry out a task if reasonably you believe that it poses a risk to your health and safety or the environment. Hazards and risk management. A number of hazards existing in our offices and laboratories. AECI Water also stores hazardous chemicals in the warehouses, which must be stored appropriately. These include raw materials, intermediates, finished products, and waste materials. The hazards posed by these chemicals include inhalation, absorption through the skin, and ingestion, which can have detrimental effects on your health. Other hazards include spillages, fire, and explosions. Not only can these affect your health, but also can cause harm to the environment and the general public's health or your fellow workers. Do not exceed maximum storage capacity. This could result in a release of product causing spillages, fires, or explosions. When walking around the warehouses, be on the lookout for any spillages and report those to the AECI personnel. When storing chemicals, ensure that they are compatible with one another. To protect yourself against hazards associated with the use of hazardous chemicals, ensure that you are trained on hazards associated with each chemical that you handle. Before, during, and after any task, zero in. Zoom in on any area. Consider the task at hand, people around, the area of concern, and the tools required to complete the job. Evaluate. Evaluate the risk by looking at what can go wrong, how and why it will go wrong. Reaffirm. Reaffirm controls and behaviors required. Opportunity. Correct any deviations and ask for help when not sure. Before working on any equipment, ensure that it is decontaminated and free from hazardous materials. Where hazardous materials cannot be removed, ensure that you wear the appropriate PPE as prescribed on the Operating Instructions, SDS, and Permit to Work. These may include the use of acid suits, aprons, respiratory PPE, and so on. After handling hazardous substances, ensure your hands are washed before you smoke or eat. When exposed to hazardous chemical substances, apply dipotterine immediately and remember to report the matter to your supervisor before the end of the shift. When conducting any physical work in these areas, you must obtain a permit to work issued by the competent and authorized person or official. No permit shall be issued unless the equipment to be worked on has been made safe and positively isolated from live systems. The acceptor shall discuss the permit requirements with every person involved. Hot work or open flame permits. Hot work activities can cause incidents if not managed properly, and as such, they should be avoided unless adequate precautionary measures have been put in place to ensure safe execution of the task. Alternative methods shall be considered before resorting to hot work. The area or the equipment must be made safe prior to starting work. Test the atmosphere before any hot work activity starts. This includes all nearby pits or sumps and tank drains. Ensure that there are no combustibles or flammables in the area where hot work is performed. Where sparks may be generated, steps must be taken to prevent the spread of sparks or slag when welding, cutting, or grinding, etc. Trained standby personnel must be available with the relevant firefighting equipment as prescribed on the permit. Smoking is permitted only in designated areas. Electrical isolation and energy testing. Isolation and zero energy testing prevent injuries caused by exposure from live electrical equipment, high pressure fluid, hazardous chemicals exposure, and radiation exposure. Before any work starts, ensure that the equipment to be worked on is electrically and mechanically isolated and locked out. A functionality test must be conducted to ensure that the equipment is electrically isolated. Each discipline, for example mechanical, electrical, and process, working on that equipment must attach his or her own lock to the switch. Place "Danger, do not operate" or "Danger, locked out" notices on isolated equipment. Before commissioning any electrical equipment, unless all permits have been signed off and the equipment is ready to start up, diligently perform your pre-startup checks. They are in place to minimize and prevent process safety incidents. Vehicle and road safety. Only operate or drive vehicles that you are licensed and authorized to. Inspect the vehicle before driving and only drive it if it is roadworthy. Talking on a cell phone or texting while driving is strictly prohibited. Remove any prohibited items before driving into or out of the site. Alternatively, hand those items to the security at the gate. Loose tools and equipment are not transported in the passenger seating areas. Keep your gate entry permits and a valid driver's license card with you at all times. Ensure that the vehicle is not overloaded or that the load is not protruding from the back. Material safety data sheets shall be made available for any chemicals or hazardous goods being transported. Only park in designated areas. Only reverse parking is allowed on site. Obey all traffic rules, including speed limits. Drivers must be on the lookout for pedestrians while driving on site and give way. Pedestrian safety. Pedestrians must be aware of moving vehicles and forklifts on site. Before crossing any road, ensure that it is safe to do so and ascertain that the driver can see you. Cross the roads on designated pedestrian crossings only. Working at heights. All work carried out at heights above 2 meters requires a permit. Always secure yourself when working at heights and stop work immediately when not sure. Make sure that you are trained on the fall protection or prevention plan. Ensure that the fall protection equipment is suitable for use. It must be inspected before use. When walking up or down the stairs, maintain 3-point contact. Keep your eyes on the path, have 1 foot on the staircase, and hold on to the handrail. Inspect ladders before use. Use an approved ladder. Ladders must be placed on a stable surface and secured while in use. A buddy system is required. Never climb a ladder with tools in your hands. Be authorized and competent. Only do work that you are authorized and competent to do. On-the-job training ensures that work instructions are understood and applied. Make sure that you are trained on the hazards associated with the job or tasks you are undertaking. Rigging and lifting activities. Rigging and lifting activities will only be conducted by competent and authorized persons. When rigging and lifting activities are in progress, the area must be barricaded off and unauthorized entry into the area is prohibited. You are not allowed to stand under suspended loads. Failure to adhere to this rule could result in serious consequences. Ensure that all lifting equipment is inspected and suitable for purpose. Do not overload the racks, as this will result in structural collapse and personnel injuries. Moving and rotating machinery. Beware of moving and rotating machinery in our warehouses. Never work on, near, or under rotating or moving machinery. These could cause injuries such as crushed hands and severe injury. Ensure that all rotating machinery is operated only when guards and interlocks are safely in place and functioning as intended. Before working on rotating or moving machinery, ensure that the equipment is electrically isolated and that you are in possession of a valid permit to work. Inspect moving and rotating equipment before startup to ensure that all work has been completed and that the rotating machinery is ready to start up. Loose-fitting clothing, long hair or jewelry is strictly prohibited when working near rotating and moving machinery, as these can be caught in moving or rotating machinery. Forklift safety. Forklifts can only be driven by a competent driver who possesses a valid license. A forklift must not be driven into areas where the slope and condition of the surface make the area unsuitable for the type of forklift being used. When driving a forklift, keep to the speed limit and always fasten your seatbelt. The forklift must be inspected for safety and operational faults prior to the first use on each shift. Take note of the forklift reverse siren. You will hear a warning sound. Always pay attention to the alarms and warning lights when working around the warehouse. Hand and specialized tools. Inspect your tools before use and ensure that they are safe and suitable for purpose. Do not throw tools from one location to another or from one employee to another. Use the right tool for the right job. Transport hand tools only in toolboxes or tool bags. Do not carry sharp or pointed hand tools such as knives in your pocket. Ensure that no objects can fall from heights injuring people below you. Where practical, no work may be carried out below unless measures have been taken to prevent falling objects. Electrical appliances inspection. All appliances must always be maintained in good working order. If any appliances are unsafe to use, they must be taken out of service. This includes equipment with bare wires, frayed covering, cracked plug tops, or loose pins. Ensure that the electrical appliances you bring on site are approved by AECI and that they are inspected as per the schedule. Excavation safety. Excavation and trenching are among the most hazardous construction operations which pose dangers such as cave-ins, a person falling loads, hazardous atmospheres such as an accumulation of gases in the trench, cutting into surfaces, and so on. For this reason, any excavation done on site requires an excavation permit as well as the appropriate plant permit to work. No excavation shall be done unless the area has been surveyed for underground services. If during excavation with the Umbogintwini Industrial Complex, groundwater or foreign material that cannot be identified is encountered, it must be considered toxic. The excavation must be stopped immediately and the contractor must notify the originator and the APS Environmental Department on this phone number, 082-440-7207. Alcohol and drug abuse. The nature of our business makes it extremely dangerous for any individual to drive, operate any equipment, or work under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Therefore, AECI Water applies zero tolerance when it comes to drugs and alcohol. No person may enter the site if under the influence of drugs or alcohol. You shall not bring any alcohol to any of the AECI Water premises. Searches for alcohol, prohibited drugs, and other substances of abuse within the workplace may be conducted. Should we believe that you are under the influence, you will be immediately removed from the site. The misuse of legitimate drugs or the sale, possession, distribution, or use of other substances of abuse in the workplace is strictly prohibited. Any employee who suspects another individual of being intoxicated or in an unfit state due to the influence of alcohol or drugs shall report the matter to supervision or security. Safety or emergency equipment. In the interest of health and safety, do not misuse or abuse any equipment provided. Do not remove any emergency fire equipment from its location. Standby personnel have standby equipment. For your safety and emergency assistance, we have diphoterine stations and safety showers strategically located at high-risk areas throughout the site. When carrying out work that includes handling of chemicals, diphoterine shall be placed as close as possible for a speedy response in case of the chemical splash. Know the location of all emergency equipment. This will save your life or prevent permanent scarring. Do not cause any obstructions to emergency equipment, as these may be needed in case of an emergency. Management of incidents. Injury on site. Know who the first aider of the area is and who to call in case of an emergency. All incidents must be reported immediately to the supervisor or AECI employee in the vicinity so that the necessary corrective measures may be taken. Please take note of the relevant site emergency numbers. You are not allowed to take any videos or photos of the emergency scene unless authorized to do so for the purposes of the investigation. Spillages should be contained and cleaned up as soon as possible. Where possible, divert leaks away from the clean stormwater drains to avoid environmental pollution. Treat all leaks as hazardous. Never respond to leaks without adequate PPE. What to do when splashed with chemical. When splashed with corrosive or irritant chemicals on the skin or eyes, it's critical to wash the affected area immediately. Never delay washing. Diphoterine is the most effective solution as a primary action and should be your priority treatment. If there is no diphoterine available, then use the safety shower to rinse off, followed by diphoterine as soon as possible. In cases where the safety shower was used first, apply triple that amount of diphoterine. Remove contaminated clothing and contact lenses and continue washing. Use the entire contents of the diphoterine container. Do not put contaminated clothes back on. General housekeeping. We take pride in the appearance of our facility. All our workspaces must be maintained to the highest housekeeping standards. Housekeeping is the responsibility of all employees. Yes, that includes you. Keep aisles, walkways, corridors, staircases, entrance halls, doorways, and emergency exits clear and accessible. Report any defective signs or plant equipment to your supervisor or plant personnel. Ensure that equipment laydown areas are clearly identified and kept in good condition at all times. Dispose waste in dedicated bins. Do not mix plant-contaminated waste and general office waste. Do not put chemicals and oil in the stormwater drains. No eating and drinking in the laboratory and warehouse. Only eat in designated eating areas. Safety will always be integral to our culture, and each and every one of us is responsible for both our individual and collective well-being, because we are zero heroes. This induction is valid for a period of 12 months. Once you've completed the induction, you will be issued with an access card, which you must keep in your possession at all times while on our sites or our facilities. Failure to do so will result in you being removed from the site. Thank you for your time. Please go out there and practice these rules. Remember to zero in before, during, and after any task.